mobile phones, laptops, tablets, and everything in between. This is Sean and Sean, and you're listening to the Silicon Theory Podcast. Speaking of another company that is trying to innovate in the space, we've seen a lot of leaks of the Pixel 4. We've gone from, what is Google doing? This is wrong. The Pixel 3 is a disaster. Apple better hit it out of the park, or Google better hit it out of the park and come correct with something that's going to be freaking awesome to make up for all of the challenges that the Pixel 3 and 3 XL had, and also as a way of apologizing for that giant notch that the Pixel 3 XL came out with. And it was certainly the Pixel 3s were some of their worst selling phones of the year. And then they kind of balanced that out with the 3A and the 3A XL, a much more value-focused phone. And then we started to get some of the stuff around the Pixel 4. So we've got two devices. We've got no notch. We've got a single front-facing camera instead of a dual front-facing camera. But now we have two cameras on the back instead of one. So like a man's receding hairline, the camera went from front to the back. And then we've got some other really interesting stuff in terms of the display. More than likely is going to be 90 hertz. We're going to have a camera with a standard aperture and then a 8x telephoto from what I've seen and heard so far. That in combination with their super high-res zoom, which uses the shaking of the gyroscope to enhance digital zoomed photos. We've got some really interesting assistant stuff. We've got Project Soli, which is their radar no-touch motion gestures thing. We've got some really interesting stuff from a photography standpoint, like maybe astrophotography, maybe better motion capture for moving subjects with the camera. And we've got a good-sized battery in the Pixel 4 XL, 3,700 milliamp hours, if I remember right. The little one's probably going to be a little bit disappointing. I think it's 2,700 milliamp hours, which I think is too small. But we kind of went from a place where Google doesn't know what they're doing and they've lost their minds and the Pixel 3 is a dumpster fire and they need to get out of the hardware business to, hey, the Pixel 4 and Pixel 4 XL might actually be pretty cool. And I read kind of like an opinion piece from Daniel Bader over at Android Central where he said, is the Pixel 4 going to be the phone of the year? How did we get from the Pixel 3 as a dumpster fire to the Pixel 4 might be pretty damn good so fast?
I think a couple reasons. First of all, it's funny, we've always kind of made fun of the Pixels for their design always looked like a full generation to maybe even further back behind everyone else.
Let's not mention the Pixel 1. Yeah, let's not go there.
Sorry, say again?
The Pixel 1, don't remind me. It was not fantastic.
And it's weird, like they have not embraced the bezel-less look.
Revolution.
What
the bezel-less revolution.
Is a phone that has a rather decent-sized forehead, although not something that I would consider to be like ridiculous. In fact, photos leaked out just before we went on, I don't know, about an hour ago, of two units, the black and the Panda, powered on. And they're actually, like, if I were to describe it, it looks kind of like the Galaxy. It reminds me a lot of my Note 8, only with, like, a very slim bottom bezel. I guess it looks like a Note 9 because they're asymmetrical, but the design is unique. I would say, one, it kind of has a uniform bezel most of the way around. And I kind of like the way it looks, despite the fact that it doesn't look quite as futuristic as some of the other Android phones out there. I like the fact that the screen's flat. And, yeah, the forehead, I'm okay with them having a little bit of bezel as long as there's a purpose for it. It's, as you already stated, it has a camera. It has Project Soli. It has this radar system that's supposed to have a very, very sophisticated face unlock system that perhaps surpasses Apple's version of that.
We'll see.
And so it's really, and its camera, I was just reading another shootout today of someone taking pictures with a Note 10 versus a Pixel 3. So this is last year's phone. The Pixel 3 was taking better pictures. So this is one of those things where I think, it's nice that they added a dual camera. I'll be honest, I'm not as interested in the telephoto as I would be in a wide angle. I think wide angle is where it's at if you only have two. But
yeah, same here.
I think the 8x zoom has utility. Somehow their version looks less ugly than the Apple version, too. Like, it has the black camera square that's very similar, but I don't know what it is. It looks slightly better somehow when I'm looking at these real life images.
It doesn't look that thick either. When they showed the release video, well, the rumored release video on Twitter, when they rotated the camera sideways, or they rotated the phone sideways, the camera hump didn't look that thick. Like, it looked thicker in earlier renders. So it doesn't, again, when you slap a case on it, I don't think it's going to be that bad looking.
No, and we've seen, like, I really like the Panda variant that just leaked out again tonight. It's got the black sides, but it has the white back and everything. And it has, the colorful orange button that looks pretty neat. And then we've seen an actual full-on orange version that is like, orange all the way. And
do you know why it's orange?
Looking too.
Do you know why it's orange?
I don't know. I was like, no, I'm sure you're going to make some bad pun here shortly. Go ahead.
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Yeah.
Do you think I would really stoop so low as to make a bad pun about the color of a phone?
Absolutely. Go ahead, do it.
You're probably right. You know why it's orange? Because it's the color of fire, baby. That phone's going to be fire.
Can you cut that out of the final?
Don't worry, it won't make it. I'll cut that. It won't show up in post. We'll be fine.
Sweet baby Jesus. No, but like, again, so it's, in a lot of ways, I would say Google's a fascinating company. Like, they, much like Apple, they have prioritized function over form. And I think that backfired in things like the Pixel 3 XL with that just absolutely god-awful, atrocious notch that is going to go down even as the worst notch in the notch era, which is just, that's amazing. That's
saying something, yeah, for sure.
It's tremendously bad. But again, this design, while not being super cutting edge, somehow looks good and is endearing, and the functionality is interesting. Now, I don't know. The 3D Face Unlock, I'm totally interested in, especially if it's a better implementation of Apple's. I mean, that's great. I'm not so sure when I think about the radar hand gestures. I could see some utility for it, though. It's like, there is a use case for you're washing the dishes or whatever, and you want to skip songs or what have you, and you can just wave your hand over without touching your phone. Like, that's interesting. That's not a game changer for me. I wouldn't say that's something where it's like, oh, I have to have that. I'm a little bit worried that the gestures could end up being gimmicky, but at least they're doing something interesting and they're doing something unique, and I at least give them credit for that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that Google's, there was some talk about, how the Pixel 3 was kind of the last phone from the external group before they brought the HTC folks fully in-house and had to do their own design rechange of the language and how they really wanted it to be. And so the Pixel 4 in some ways might actually be the first true Google phone from a both form and function standpoint. And I think that they're taking some risks, which I think in some respect, Rick Osterloh and his team realized that maybe they need to kind of do because of the negative press that surrounded the Pixel 3. So, in a lot of these things and R&D cycles are much further ahead in development, just, a year away. Like, they've probably been working on these things for a couple of years now, but Project Soli. So, could it be just like LG's air gestures and be mostly a gimmick? Yes. Do I trust Google to maybe implement it better than LG? Yeah, probably. Like what they've done with machine learning and some of the other tweaks that they've done, like things like Now Playing and things like the squeeze for activating the Google Assistant have been seen initially as gimmicky, but it's actually in real life use turned out to be incredibly useful. I use the squeeze gestures all the time when I have my Pixel with me, and the Now Playing thing is something that's so useful it's almost indispensable. There's not hardly any time when I'm listening to something out in the world and I go, oh man, what's that song? And instead of having to actually execute a command, the phone already knows it and it just displays on the lock screen. Like, I think in some ways Google's taking these chances because they go, okay, we've got to find a way to differentiate ourselves and we've got to kind of find a way to distance ourselves from the past. So how can we best do that? What do people want to do? Well, people want to take good pictures in low light. Boom, you get night sight. I don't know if there's anybody really asking to take the picture of the night sky, but hey, maybe it's just better night sight, and so you're getting that kind of as like a nice little side effect, a nice little bonus. But the other stuff that I've heard about the Assistant, things like being able to use duplex to make phone calls, make reservations for you, all the way up to the most recent rumor, which is the fact that the Pixel and the Google Assistant will be able to take over calls that you're on hold for, and it'll actually just notify you when there's a live person that comes back on the line. This is the kind of stuff that And as the video kind of showed, from the people who made you this, and then they show maps and they show YouTube and they show a bunch of other stuff, it seems like Google is really now invested in understanding how people use their phone and then giving them a phone that actually improves the quality of the things that they do every day. Yeah, they're probably not going to have, the longest battery life. They're probably not going to have the best looking screen. But the things that matter to people the most are decent battery life, good camera, and regular, if not software updates, but security updates. And Google's committed to all of those things. Their camera is going to be class leading. The battery life is going to be, especially on the big one, probably good enough. And they're committing to 3 years of updates for, major OS variants and security patches. So
not only that, I'm telling you, the 90 hertz screen is like a game changer for me. I literally wouldn't go back. So they're going to be only the second real OEM in the United States anyway to have that and to offer that. And the first on a real mainstream flagship, because the OnePlus 7 Pro, I think, is not as mainstream as the Pixel, certainly. So it's one of those things where that's a big deal, too. I give them credit. They're kind of charting their own course, and sometimes that can be bad. But I will say in this case, in the land of ugly notches, I think they learned their lesson and said, geez, that was really bad. Let's not do that again. They couldn't do the hole punch with an AMOLED screen because Samsung's display had a guarantee on that for a year, so no one else could do it. So really their choice would have been to do some kind of waterfall notch or notched flagship or kind of this design they settled in. And all things considered, I think the design they settled in actually makes a lot of functional sense. As I said, I love that it's a flat screen, it's 90 hertz. The larger one has a 3,700 milliamp hour battery, so that's pretty good, although I'm guessing their implementation of the 90 hertz will probably be dynamic like OnePlus. It'll turn off maybe more aggressively because there is a battery hit for that. But I think they're doing a bunch of really interesting things, and so they stand out in that regard. It's like they are pushing the envelope in areas where I go, again, at least that's interesting. And so the Google phones hold a lot more interest in me, than the Apple phones do. And compared to last year, I absolutely prefer this design. As I said, there's something kind of this sounds goofy, but there's something just about the design that works. It's kind of charming in a weird way, at least in the pictures that I've seen so far. So it's a really interesting phone. I'm not sure it'll win Phone of the Year for me in a universe where OnePlus is going to release a OnePlus 7T Pro, and I love my OnePlus 7 Pro. And then the Note 10 Pro is a pretty impressive piece of hardware too. So it remains to be seen whether it's going to be my award winner for Phone of the Year. But I think the fact that we're even discussing it in that way is a huge step forward for them, because I don't think there was...
Yeah, nobody's talking about the Pixel 3.
The Pixel 3 XL was Phone of the Year.
Yeah, not a chance. And to me, the linchpin really is not even the extra features, not even all the good stuff that we know is already going to be good. It's going to be how well Google's Face Unlock works, because this device will not have a fingerprint scanner, under glass or rear mounted or anything else. So if Google can get the face scanning right, if Project Soli is involved in some way, shape, or form, and that allows it to do the depth map on your face using radar or LiDAR or some other kind of DAR, and getting it to a point where it can consistently perform at least on par with Apple's Face ID, I think they're going to have a real winner, because I think people see the advantages of biometric authentication and using that as not only your secure method of payment, as far as using it to authenticate you when you're logging into websites, using it when you're accessing your password managers. I think that it is a definite advantage for some things. I mean, I do like my fingerprint scanner underneath the glass and otherwise, because I think it works in a number of different and more... I don't want to say geographic, because that's not the right thing, but you can use your fingerprint scanner when the phone's in your pocket. You can use it when it's upside down. You can use it when the phone is sideways. You can use your fingerprint anytime you can hold the phone, which is pretty much every time you've got the phone in your hand. And the Face ID is not exactly, it's not exactly at that level yet, but for a lot of other functional things, when you're actually using your phone, when you're interacting with your phone, I've used Apple's, Face ID on, the iPhone XS Max that we had as a review unit, and it works good. I tried to fool it with sunglasses. I tried to fool it with a hat. If our listeners haven't already, they can go out and check my review of that phone on our YouTube channel, and you've got me in different comical makeups of trying to fool Face ID, and every single time it got me and it unlocked the phone. So if Google can get to a point where it's reasonably approximating how good Face ID is, I think everything else about the phone is already set up for success, and this is really the only thing that's going to make or break it, because if it is anywhere close to what we would typically associate as a normal Google level product in terms of the actual face recognition, it's going to be problematic at best and a dumpster fire at worst.
No, I have high hopes. The leaks are nice. I think it's going to be the best Google phone by a fair stretch, and yeah, it definitely stands out as unique this year, and I always applaud anybody who's doing something unique when smartphones are kind of converging into this, no bezel design form factor. They're doing something different, and I think they're being thoughtful about the things that they want to offer and the way that they want to do things. And I think, again, I am the guy that wants, a completely bezel-less phone or a folding phone. So I'm really interested in pushing the envelope. But there's a lot of people out there, and I even see it on, our Android, which is a very high-end Android guys, although it's kind of a cesspool in there. But
didn't that subreddit just get banned recently?
Yeah, but that was an accident. But it's just one of those things where there's a lot of people who are saying, the bezel-less thing is just stupid and overblown and has gone way too far. I like having a little bit of bezel so that I can, not accidentally touch the sides all the time. And these features that they're adding are actually useful to me. And that's an absolutely valid point, I think. But again, they're trying things that are more interesting than what Apple's doing.